Welcome to the Truly Passive Income Podcast. I'm Neil Henderson.
And I'm Clint Harris. Today we have Chad Ackerman with us today. Chad Ackerman is one of the co-founders of Left Field Investors. Chad, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you guys having me on. Really excited about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy for you to be here. So Neil and I were talking earlier. We met at the Best Ever Conference in Salt Lake City. And of everybody there, it's my second year at the conference. Very pessimistic feel to the whole thing this year compared to the year before, just because of the current market, the variable rate debt and things like that. The most exciting for me coming out of that conference was meeting up with you guys, with what you guys are doing with Left Field, the community that you've put together, 1,300 active members. That for me was, I think, the coolest thing. So I'm really excited to have you on.
Well, I'm glad you didn't just say the happy hour we threw. So I'm glad it was more content than entertainment.
What happy hour? I didn't get to see a happy hour. There was a happy hour?
Neil got stuck in the elevator for an hour and missed the first half of the happy hour.
That's great.
I heard the food was amazing, but it was gone until I got
The
there.
food was fantastic. Yes. But no, we really loved hearing your guys' story too, and meeting Nomad and understanding your guys' strategy. And we look for a lot of diverse asset class and operators to bring to our community. And you guys are unique by all means. So we were excited to meet you guys too and get you engaged with the community as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here. I want to talk a little bit about, obviously give you a platform to talk about what you guys are doing at Left Field. But on top of that, you've got a banking background. I know you work in HR for a long time. You have you're a data analytics guy, which speaks to my heart. I've got a background investing in short-term rental and multifamily conversions, and that certainly helped me have some success there. So, but your story that I've been listening to your content, things like that, and you sat on the sidelines for quite a while, and then you really turned it on and you got aggressive, I guess maybe 5 or 7 years ago. So kind of tell us about your story a little bit.
no, that's fair. I don't know if I was sitting on the sidelines or just ignorant to what was available out there. I think is probably a better way to say it. But I was a career corporate guy. I'd done the HR thing for 30 plus years and just thought that was the way. It's what I was taught, do the 401k, set up a Roth, go through that process. And I was following that to a T. And I switched jobs in 2015. And I used to live 2 miles from where this new job, I had a commute. And somebody at the new job said something about getting multiple income streams and talked about real estate. And I was like, well, real estate's always been something that's been intriguing to me. I'll go out and start finding some podcasts and started listening to Bigger Pockets and then started reading their books or listening to their books in my commute. And I got bit by the bug bad that it really fired me up to want to look into this. And I was chasing the shiny object syndrome bad of not sure what I wanted to do, was in a full-time W-2, didn't really think I could replace my income everything I looked at, I just needed to scale like crazy that I was like, I wasn't comfortable with making it work. I didn't know how I'd be able to get there. And I'd found a local meetup group here in Columbus, Ohio through Bigger Pockets that was called Coin that I went to 4 or 5 of those. And the last one that I went to, Jim Pfeiffer got up and talked about how he left his corporate job to pursue other things because of his passive income from investing in syndications. And I'm like, this sounds like the thing. This is what I've been looking for. I don't have to worry about the scale as bad. I don't have to worry about tenants. I don't have to worry about construction or rehab or whatever, but I can scale still. And so I reached out to him after the meeting, found out we live in the same suburb of Columbus. So we got together for a drink and, I'll cut out a lot of the middle story, but yada, yada, yada. Here we are. Several years later, we've started a whole community of like-minded passive investors to educate and network together and grow. And that's allowed me to be able to leave my corporate job and retire from the corporate world, if you will, and doing the Left Field thing full time, as well as my own passive investing and so forth. So I skipped over a lot there, but you got the beginning is kind of interesting, I think. And you don't want to hear about all my shiny object chasing, probably.
Neil and I have the same disease. I can promise you that. And one thing that you said that I don't want to pontificate here, but something as small as you changing jobs and having a commute and having windshield time and using that time and investing in yourself completely changed the financial trajectory of the rest of your life and where you are right now. The same thing happened to me.
And I started, I wasn't a big guy before that, but once I got into it, I thought, okay, you're blessed with this time. I can listen to the, true crimes kind of things that entertain me, or I could try to better myself. And that was really the approach. And then I kind of even paused after I'd been doing it for several months, and I'd read like 12 books in the car or listened to 12 books and umpteen podcasts. I'm like, well, maybe I need to focus on being a better parent. And so I started trading out like business podcasts and books for self-help or betterment kind of things too, just to like, again, take advantage of what time I had available to me to really turn this into something profitable personally, spiritually, the whole ball of wax for me. That was really my take on this when I had that time available to me.
So, Chad, the exact same thing happened to me when my wife and I relocated. I had a 16-year career in medical sales, 11 years before we moved to Wilmington. I took a promotion. We moved to Wilmington, North Carolina in 2000. And my wife was in medical sales as well. She was going back and forth a couple times a week to Columbia, which is about a 3-hour drive. And she started telling me about some podcasts, Some Pockets podcast. And I was like, okay, well, I have no interest in making pants or anything. So I didn't really understand what it was about. And over a period of a couple months, we always talked about real estate. We had invested. We had a small portfolio of 9 single family homes. We did most of it wrong, but we didn't know. Her vocabulary changed. And the way that she was talking about what we were doing and forced appreciation and leverage, she started using different words and having different conversations and looking at things with the goal in mind. And I was like, what is going on? And then that's when she turned me on to the world of podcasts. And I just want to say that no matter what it is, if you don't know how to do something, or, you have questions about your future and the answer is, I don't know, that's okay, because that just implies ambiguity. Ambiguity is a lack of education, and education is free. We have more available right now than we ever have in the entire world. So whether it's real estate, self-help, raising kids, better marriage, whatever it is, having that time and investing that time in yourself is monumental. If you add up the amount of windshield time that you have, there's a good chance that in just a couple years, it's enough hours for a master's program. So anyway, that's my soapbox. That's my soapbox on that. But good for you, man. I'm proud of you.
Chad, you had a little bit different real estate trajectory than the average passive investor. Is that you never invested in real estate actively, other than perhaps buying your own personal residence. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
So what was it that you'd mentioned coin? What was it that spurred you to take an interest in investing in real estate in the first place?
I actually have a minor degree in real estate. So I had been in real estate during college. I was going to school at night, putting myself through college, working for a civil engineer firm of all things. We were the right-of-way department. So we went in and bought all the real estate or signed all the contracts to be able to go do road work, utility work, whatever, that got me interested in it. And I got my real estate license in Ohio, never sold a house. But the project we were on, we bought 250 homes and relocated people out of it. So I said I never bought it or never sold a house, but I bought an awful lot of houses with my short year that are 2 years that I was doing this. So I always kind of had that inkling, but I left it for 25 years or so before this person that I work with kind of dropped the hint of about a second income stream. I'd had buddies that had done flips and some buy and holds and stuff, single family work. So I'd seen it, and what always irked me is like, hey, I'd call them up, you want to go golf on Saturday? Well, I can't, I got to go to the rental. And well, I can't, I got to go, move a person out or get them evicted or whatever. And I'm like, it never really rung through with me, especially while I was in a W, to dedicate that much time to it. And so the only reason I probably didn't pull a trigger was just, it just never seemed to fit to be like, is this really a path I can take and scale and be comfortable doing it? And in that conversation with Jim, he's kind of the first one that broke it down and said, well, let's say you had 50 grand to go buy a distressed single family home, and you had to put another 25 grand into it, and you flip it over and maybe you make 125 on it. He said, what if I told you could do that exact same thing in the syndication world without having to lift a hammer or vet a tenant or whatever the case was? And I was like, I'm intrigued. I like that a lot. And so I never got comfortable enough to pull the trigger on a single family thing. But once he kind of walked me through that logic, and then when he told me about the tax advantages and I really started to understand that in my math, I was bit by the bug again. That's when I got really excited. And Clint, as you had said, the first deal then that I got into, forget about single family, I jumped to a 17-story building in downtown Cleveland that I got involved with instead. And I haven't looked back since. I've loved the space ever since then.
Yeah, that was a conversion on an old existing building, I believe. And I've heard some of your content on that in the past. Tell me a little bit about when you got started. I heard you mention before that maybe you wouldn't have done that as your first deal. I believe you said that somewhere just from a cash flow standpoint. But in terms of when you made the decision that you're aggressively going to pursue a strategy that could get you out of your W-2 job, that clearly comes with defined goals and a timeline and probably a diversification strategy. So walk us through kind of where your head was at as you made that decision and how you've honed in on that.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I'd like to tell you I had that all worked out when I started, and the 17-story building was strategic, but it was a shiny object syndrome. It was neat. It was, ooh, this is cool. It's a Rockefeller building. Rockefeller built it back in the day. They're rehabbing it to micro apartments from office space. And Sherman-Williams bought the surface lot right next door. They're going to build their corporate global headquarters there. And so it's great location. So yeah, it was a lot of luck and a lot of shiny objects in that made me pick that one. The reason why I say I probably shouldn't have gotten into it is that my goal, once I finally got to that point and wrote it down and defined it, was to get out of my W-2. And that particular investment, though it will be, I think, a good investment, I'm happy I'm in it. It hasn't cash flowed in 3 years because it's a major rehab. It's tied up in a lot of paperwork still. So it's done nothing for my immediate goals of needing cash flow to get out of my W-2, if you will. It wasn't a mistake. It's not like some guy ran off with my money and I went broke on that deal. Nobody's going to have empathy for me over that deal, I think, by the end of the day, which is okay. It's just, it did teach me a lot of, hey, really understand what you're getting into. There are many different aspects of these deals that can get very almost customizable that really needs to align to your goals if you're going to be, strategically looking at this. And it's easy to get lost in some of that. It's not rocket science, but you need to understand it to be sure that you aren't buying a whole bunch of builds or full rehabs if you need cash flow, which was really what I was ultimately trying to look for and just didn't realize it at the time. So it helped me learn a lot because it was the first deal. Once you get in, just taking action to get into that first deal teaches you so much, but it really then let me regroup and define my goals. And then I could be better about picking and choosing what I got into next.
Well, you really discovered that there are, two primary types of investments in syndication. There's growth or equity growth and cash flow. And then there's a blend of both. And that's really what you need to be clear about going in, very clear about, is what is the short-term goal? What are the short-term distributions of the syndication, and what's the long-term timeline, and how does that fit in with your investing goals?
Like, that's well said. Yep. That's what I try to preach in my podcast as well, of like, I don't have, thank goodness, that terrible deal that went sour kind of example to give to people, but I can give them that, hey, I got excited, I jumped in, which isn't the worst thing to do as long as, you did pick a right deal. But I've done much better since I've known my goals better and could really understand what those asset types are and how they're going to help my goals in the long run. And then go forward from there. So it was helpful. Luckily, it wasn't a total bust kind of thing. If anything, it may be a home run one day, honestly. So I say nobody will feel sorry for me for picking the wrong one there.
Yeah, I'm sure that it will be. I think that when it comes to the idea of either figuring out writing and verbalizing your own goals or picking operators, picking asset classes, picking deals, I think that's really where the value and importance of left field investors shines to me, because that community that comes out of that, if I'm looking at a deal, it's one thing versus if you have 500 sets of eyes looking at that deal. And the conversation that comes up and hearing other people's goals and what they're trying to achieve in their timeline, it rubs off on me. And that affects me. And I'm like, oh, I want to do that. The same way that Jim had a conversation with you and you're like, that's what I want for my future. That's what I want that to look like. That's where the reality of, I think that real estate investing has changed so much just in the last 10, 15, 20 years because of our ability to network. Obviously locally. We all have a computer in our pocket now, podcast, forums, and things of that nature. The community that you guys are building and the scale that you have 1,300 members. And so there's so many different goals. There's so many different deals out there that you put all that together. It's really powerful. And it helps you sharpen kind of what you're aiming after.
Yeah. And it's a funny story. You talk about the luck of discovering the windshield time and starting into the podcast world and how that changed my trajectory. Left field is the exact same kind of idea there, that we opened it up in March of 2020 with the intent that it was going to be a 10 to 15 person meetup. And COVID hit right before our first meeting, that we never got to have that first meetup. And we got put on Zoom like everybody else in the world got put on to collaborate. And organically, it snowballed on us then, to where 3 years later, we've got 1,300 people, like you say, in the community, that we never would have been here talking to you from a left field perspective had COVID not happened and put us onto Zoom. And it took off from there, which I think is just, call it fate, call it, divine intervention, whatever it is. It gives me goosebumps half the time when I think about it, of how close we could have been to not coming here or being here at the time, but enough dominoes fell at the right order at the right time that it really put it together. And now, to your point, in the economy we are in right now, I don't think there's anything better than to be a part of a community, to kind of make sure you're educated before you pull the trigger on things, because it's getting tighter. We're seeing more and more operators that maybe weren't ready for these kind of environments being exposed now. And so having that community to kind of bounce off of and feel, a little better about getting into this, I think is a huge asset at this point. That I've been, I'm 10 times a better investor today than I was when I got in that first deal. Just, what got me excited about that first deal was the multiplier they had on it and the cash flow, the preferred cash they had on it. Well, I didn't pay attention to capital stack. I didn't pay attention to the debt. I didn't pay attention to most of the metrics. And, I've gotten so much more educated through my time developing left field and being a part of this, as well as all the interactions I've had with the community members, that, I couldn't have paid for any better education than what I've gotten by doing all this stuff. So it's been a neat journey.
Well, talk to us a little bit about some of the education that you've gotten after that first deal, some of the lessons learned. You talked about understanding the capital stack, understanding when the distributions are going to go out, things like that. You've obviously, do you mind telling us how many deals you're an LP in now?
I'm up to, I think it's 18 deals now that I'm in, between directly investing them. And then we've partnered with a company called Trivest that allows you to group invest as limited partners. I'm in 4 different tribes, investing in different deals with them now. One of those tribes I always like to share, I've put my 2 teenage kids in with me, and we invest together so I can start teaching them about it and getting them, show them tangible stuff. They're helping me vet deals. They're helping, they're learning as they go along then. So that's been another avenue that I've tacked on as I've been doing this. So they can not wait till they're 40 something like I did to figure this stuff out. They're learning about it as teenagers, that they can make hopefully better decisions, or good decisions along the way, better than I did.
I love that. So I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 7-week-old. With the 3.5-year-old, we do chores around the house so that he can get his allowance, and his allowance is $5 a week, right? 5 ones, and it's 1 is for saving, 1 is for giving, and 3 are for him. And we're working toward getting to the point where we can find a long-term goal that he wants to save money for. It's a little bit of a struggle right now, but we're getting there. Yeah. And then we've got a deal starting here.
It doesn't get easier at 8.
Starting next year, he has to start a business that we're going down to the little local farmer's market. I think he's going to grow some little basil plants and try to sell them for $1 or something. But you can't start that young enough, especially, you got teenagers, and, the moment they can sign legal documents, they're invested in something like that it creates that dialogue and that conversation. I mean, I don't know how you got started. I remember when and where I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That was the first thing that, everybody's got that moment, whether it's Big at Pockets or Rich Dad, Poor Dad or whatever it is, everybody's got that light bulb moment. And that was for me. And at a fairly young age. And then I kind of took a long time to really learn what I was doing. But man, that's so awesome. I'm excited. I'm stealing that. I'm doing that with my
No,
boys.
please
It's
do.
very-
I think it's been great. It was helpful with the teenagers that I had been in enough deals, and I had my Excel spreadsheets, and I could sit them in, and I'd had enough cash flow coming in. I could sit them down and start to show them. And I had my first deal go full cycle, so I could walk them all the way through that. And that really helped pull the whole process together for them that it started clicking. And then the interest was there then. Once they were interested, then that made it all easier to say, hey, let me put you in a tribe and let's invest in this together and so forth. So I don't know. It's one way to go about it. That's for sure. I don't know if it's the right way or not, but they're getting into it at the very least. So
Well, we all understand if in real estate investing, we all understand the value of time, especially with equity growth and cash flow over time. We all, everybody at some point wishes, man, I wish I got in 5 years earlier or 10 years earlier or whatever. Like these are the first real estate investors people are ever going to meet that can't say that. They're going to have been in it for so long and you've got the benefit of time. So I'll be honest with you, Chad, I think you might need to update your bio on Left Field Investors because it still says that you have a full-time job. And I know you to be a full-time investor. You left your job. I left my job November of 2022. And I think that you were around the same time that you are full-time a real estate investor.
March of 3 is when I left. Yeah. So not very far off from that.
Fantastic. Well, it's welcome to the other side. So tell me about the goals that you guys have for Left Field, for what you're accomplishing, the growth rate, what you guys are looking at and what you guys are doing to educate your community.
Yeah. So I think where our emphasis is, it's great timing. We were just in Minnesota, our operations team in person last week, kind of having a strategy meeting. We sat together in a conference room for 5 hours one day and 6 hours another day, hashing out kind of what direction we just did a website update. So we've been really bunkered in on that lately, and we wanted to kind of build out our direction going forward now. And I feel like we're really trying to peel back and put an emphasis on education and build out a lot more material for that for the community. One of the main things we want to do is get a bunch of masterclass videos put together and build out a library from, I think we've run into kind of just running with kind of where we are in the industry that gets pretty thick into some heavy material that we need to peel back and hit material for the newbie a lot too, to help educate them and get them started as well, that we want to put an emphasis on that also. We've got so many things that we want to build some new tools. We want to get more feedback from the community. That's how we've done a lot of the change that we've done, is relying on what the community feels like they're missing and trying to find a way to build that for them. So we want to kind of get back to that nitty gritty that we started Left Field out with, that made the culture what it is, which is the biggest thing we're trying to protect in everything we do at Left Field. We went about building Left Field as a hobby, which allowed us to build a culture because that's all we thought it was. And then a year and a half into it, we realized, hey, wait, there's a business in here too. Let's build a business around this now, but let's not upset the apple cart that is the culture that we built, because we think it's a pretty good thing. And that's ultimately our biggest asset, I think, is the community really seems to thrive because the interactions that we keep having and so forth. So we've got some ideas in mind. We've got, some plans to move forward, and we're just trying not to, disrupt anything that we've built so far, because that's what's made it work so well so far.
Well, I know that you won't, you guys have, you said the same thing, and Jim has said the same thing as well. Like, you just want to stick true to your roots and be education first. And education at the end of the day is, it's, within the foundation of who you are, you're creating some really powerful investors that together are going to be able to accomplish some really, really big things and keep each other from stepping on landmines too, right? Like, we've all had those deals when you're underwriting yourself early on. They never turn out the way that you hope that they're going to. And a lot of times you just need somebody smarter or more experienced than you to keep you from blowing your foot off. And that's one of the things that you guys have the ability to do for your community.
Yeah. Well, and I say we have that a group think, or we can lean on one another and help educate each other. I said, we may all be wrong on certain deals sometimes, and we may all go down together, but at least we have a group to go down with, kind of thing. Because, there's risk. There's inevitable risk that we can't see a lot of times too, that something may just go sideways on us. But you've at least educated yourself as good as you could by being part of a community and asking the questions and having other eyes on it. That it gives me some comfort anyway, put it that way.
Chad, can you tell me a situation where the community has maybe discovered a really good operator, or discovered an operator that they want to stay away with and stay away from? And we don't need to trash any operators here, but maybe, stalk in general.
Yeah. No, I definitely I'll give props to the one we had not met Rise 48 and Zach Happenstall prior to being involved in the community. And we had, after we had done a few deal webinars, had a few operators come in and talk, we had several community members come to us and say, "Hey, we've been investing with this guy in Phoenix and he's been doing really great. We think you ought to meet him. And he's one of our preferred partners now." We've had a great relationship with him. He's brought a lot of deals that the people in the community have been very excited about. But that's been a great connection that was brought to us by the community members. I think maybe one of the bigger stories of what's come out of the community that has turned into something, we're now starting to see clubs pop up, subgroups pop up in our community. That it started, the first thing that really splintered off from left field was a crypto focus group that the community came to us and said, "Hey, we see chatter in the forums about crypto and we'd like to learn more. Is there any experts in the group?" And we had a guy raise his hand that had been doing it for several years. And he started off a sub still under the left field umbrella, but crypto focused. And we call it the crypto bullpen. And that has spiraled. Now we have a women's group that started up that we think is fantastic. We've got a group called Next Gen that's kind of the 35 and younger. So people that are starting out, gives them an avenue to get started in it. And now we're starting to see regional left field meetups occur locally where people can get face to face. So when we open our new site, we put a club section up and allow people to open their clubs up, and boom, 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 we're starting to see these regional ones pop up that I think is awesome. And then we were like, well, shame on us that we haven't done one here in Columbus, Ohio yet. That we got to lead by example a little better sometimes. But we've got 5 or 6 that are up already, and the website's only been up for 2 weeks. That I have a feeling it's going to keep revolving around that. Charlotte's the closest one I've seen to you guys so far, FYI. So, but that's all been community based.
That's amazing. We got 4 real estate meetups here in town. I host a commercial real estate meetup, but there's always room for one more. And this is the kind of thing that I could see. It's obviously organic, right? You guys tapped into something you didn't even know was there. Now, I think that the hunger was always there. That hunger for education and alternative investment strategies was always there. The thing that you got lucky with a little bit is that you timed it right with COVID, when everybody like me that's not tech savvy was forced to learn how to use Zoom and forced to get online, because that's just where the world shifted to. But that hunger was always there. And so you guys have just tapped into something that's organic, and it's grown like wildfire on your site. There's no reason it shouldn't grow organically in physical locations as well. So
Chad, so it's called left field investors. It's not called passive real estate investors. And I want to make that clear. We talk about real estate all the time. As you said, it's crypto, it's ATMs, it's multifamily, it's storage. Is there anything in the community that you were like, wow, that's way out in left field? I never thought of that.
I think the one I heard at BEC that I'd never thought of was, there was a guy there that is syndicating laundromat that I thought,
Sam Wilson.
Sam Wilson, yes. That I'm like, well, that's interesting. I never thought, but the cash flow going through that thing, I'm like, oh, it's no different than a car wash. If car washes work, why wouldn't laundromats work? So, but honestly, we've seen some odd things that, what we flag them as, we kind of, we're in this whole syndication we call the alternative investing world. Well, when you get into these outside of the multifamily, the self-storage, the mobile home park, we call that the alternative investments that you could get into. Honestly, we love finding this stuff because the fact that the community has grown to the size it has, we feel like we potentially have people looking for anything. They want to diversify their portfolios. They're looking for that odd thing or something different to put in just to hedge or diversify a little further. So I almost feel like that's our job, is to go find operators that are doing something slightly different, which honestly is what got me so excited about Nomad and your guys' strategy, because I'm like, that's in something that they feel comfortable with from a self-storage standpoint, but it's a different take on it that we hadn't seen in the community yet, that I think they'll get very excited about, what you guys are offering, the deals you structure and so forth. And that's what I view like we need to do. We get plenty of multifamily operators. We don't have to look for that as much. I like looking for something that's a little different to give that option to our community. It may only be a small population of it, but we're at least offering them an avenue that maybe they haven't thought of before. So I love finding stuff that's just off the wall. I don't know if we have any like super strange We've gotten into the death benefits a little bit. We've seen some of that stuff. I'm trying to think of some other ones that are just kind of out of the norm, but I don't know. We're on the hunt for them. So if there are any out there, feel free to reach out to left field and let us know.
I know you guys have done, it was a coffee farm, I think a chocolate farm or something. There's a little bit of agricultural, there's crypto, obviously real estate. The ones to me that are interesting, like you said, laundromats and car washes, that it is the real estate, but then it's the operation on top. So you got to make sure that vet the operators. But yeah, it's very entertaining getting in that group. Your forum has got a lot of interesting content in a good way.
Well, in the entertainment business, we've got Broadway plays that have popped up as well, just to give you another curveball one too. So, yeah, it's, you name it. If they need to raise money for it and syndicate it, it shows up at some point in time, it seems like.
Well, I'm a big follower of a author by the name of Nicholas Nassim Taleb, who wrote a book called Anti-Fragile. And he has a strategy, his investing strategy, he has what's called the barbell strategy, which is that 90% of your investments should be in things that are nicely risk adjusted stuff that you really understand, that you're probably pretty sure is going to pay out. Index funds, pretty normal average syndications, things like that. And then you should reserve 10% for that pie in the sky, like possible home run, death benefits, whatever it is. Have you followed that strategy at all? Or are you mostly in real estate?
I followed that strategy in the real estate side. How about that?
Okay.
So I hadn't shared this with you yet, but because I got bit by the bug shortly after I did the 17-story building, and I'd done a couple more deals by then. I took a look around, knowing my goal was to get out of my W-2. I took a look around at where I had capital sitting, which was my 401k. So I actually liquidated my 401k, took everything out, paid the taxes, paid the penalty, and moved it all into real estate or into syndication business then, because I had bought into it. And it was based on where I was in my life. My kids were getting grown. I'd had college figured out for them that I was going to do. I was comfortable in my W-2 for a while, that I knew that, worst case scenario, I was 50 years old at the time. I thought, well, I could always start saving again if something went totally wrong. But I knew I'd diversify in real estate as well, that I never felt truly like I was going to lose everything. So I pulled the trigger on moving it all out of right field, as we call it, and put it into left field instead, and then try to diversify in the left field side of things. So went with multifamily as the majority of my portfolio, but then got into mobile home parks, self-storage, some just kind of did that smaller mad money into some other things. I've turned away from a lot of things. I think one of the other big lessons I've learned is to be disciplined and stay in my lanes, because we see so many different asset classes come through. There's a big shiny object syndrome in this business too, of wow, this car washes do sound neat. Let me go try that. But I've pulled back on investing in them personally, just because I've tried to discipline myself to stick with my 4 or 5 asset classes that I want to get to know even better and feel really comfortable with. Then if I've got, an extra 25 laying around or something, I can maybe go put that in a tribe and take some riskier investments with it, possibly, is one strategy. But I've really tried to stay focused in, like I said, mobile home or multifamily, mobile home park, self-storage, and then triple net lease. I like a lot of triple net lease. I've got some industrial and some commercial triple net lease that I've done too. So I've tried to just, for a little while, I want to just stick in those asset classes and learn them better. And then as I get more comfortable with them, start looking for maybe the next 2 or 3 asset classes that I'm interested in. That's been my approach.
So that's a big action step. Big time. Like at that point in your career to realize that you're betting on you, right? You're betting on your ability. Obviously you're betting on operators, but you're betting on your ability to pick deals, to pick operators, to diversify across the board. I know you to be a banking and a data analytic guy. So obviously there was a conversation there about opportunity cost, about what your 401k was doing and leaving it in there for another 15 years versus pulling it out, paying the penalties, paying the taxes, converting it, and what that difference was going to be. So what did that look like when you sat down with pen and paper and you're making that decision of like, what do I do? Do I play it safe or do I bet on everything everything that I believe in here. So what did that analysis look like for you?
It was painful. I'm a data collector, so I will sit and analyze and analyze and analyze and analyze, and then I'll analyze it again just to be sure. But then once I've kind of felt like I've ran my course and I feel comfortable with it, then I'm a buyer and I'm an action guy at that point in time. And I made it to that point. It was easy. One of the things that helped as I was talking to Jim mentored me through a lot of that. He used to be a financial advisor. He boiled it down to a little bit of a realization of like, well, you're going to pay the tax on it no matter when you do it. So you almost have to take the tax situation out of it, other than the fact, had I waited and spreaded that out longer, I probably could have lowered my tax burden on that as opposed to taking it all at once and paying a huge chunk. But I also knew, I looked at the self-directed IRAs and I was like, well, I still can't use that to get out of my W-2 though. So that was like the biggest hiccup of all of it was if I want to get out of my W-2, there's only one option then that's left. If the taxes aren't going to be as big of a concern because I'm going to pay them either way, then it boiled down to my analysis was, well, you're really only worried about 10%. And if I was 50, I thought, well, in 15 years, when I could actually touch that 401k money for the first time, I can make a lot more up on that, what I lose in that 10% doing what I'm doing in real estate, I felt, than it would be if I left it in and I watched it go up and down for another 15 years. And hopefully it's on the upcycle when I'm ready to take it out kind of thing. That it just, what I did is I set a goal, a number. And I'm like, well, if my 401k gets to this number, then I'm going to take it out and I'm not going to have buyer's remorse on it. It's like, be happy that you got this. Don't think back about, oh gosh, if I would have waited another 2 months, would have gone up more. In another day, it could have gone down quite a bit. So I was happy to just draw the line in the sand, take what I got. And, I jokingly, said, ask me, in another 3 years if it worked out all right. But so far, I was able to leave my W-2. So it's worked out so far that I don't have any regrets over doing it at this point. So hopefully that stays that way.
So I hadn't thought about it that way. Essentially it just boils down to 10%. Like you said, you're paying the taxes at some point either way. It's very interesting because I'm 40 years old. I'm sitting on an IMK and trying to figure out what to do with them. The IRA, I'm turning self-directed and that's going into the syndication. I'm trying to decide what to do with the 401k. And, I thought I had my mind made up until you and I talked today. So maybe I'm trying to go back to the drawing board and put some more.
Sorry,
more
but you're welcome. I don't know what.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It's a really interesting way of framing that.
All right, Chad, here's my last question. We try to ask every one of our guests this with the caveat that this is not investing advice. This is for informational purposes and entertainment purposes only. It's May of 2023. You have $100,000 that you have to invest within the next 90 days. What is your thought process on where you would invest that?
In this economy or in an ideal economy?
In this economy, I said it's May of 2023.
Yep. So in my situation where I am, I'm actually dealing. I have a deal that's going full cycle next week, actually. So I'm living what you're asking right now, to be honest with you. Where I am today, because I'm out of the W-2, I'm looking at cash flow. So I've got a CRE fund that I'm looking at. The cash flows really well that I'm excited about. I'm in his third fund. I'm looking to get in his fourth fund. That I'm probably going to put a lot of it in there. I'm actually, sounds like a total plug. I want to put a chunk of that in with Nomad because I'm really excited about the situations you guys are developing too. So I'm earmarking some of that money for it. Because you guys cash flow as well. So it kind of fits that same model for me that I'm looking for at this current time. But that cash flow is the biggest thing I'm looking at right now. Because I got into that 17-story building, that's going to be a big equity thing. I'm in some multifamilies that are going to have some good equity. I'm leaning more to the cash flow side of things just to help with not having that steady paycheck that I used to have, just to balance it out a little bit more. So that's where my head is personally these days.
Great answer, Chad. Especially, like I said, I'm out of the W-2 steady income world as well. So full-time investor. So I think there's a lot of importance there of looking at, like, a lot of the deals that we do are those conversion deals. And even though they have a preferred return, they may not pay out for sometimes 2 years. If we buy an old Kmart, we're converting it for a year. It takes a year to fill it up. There's other deals you can buy that are cash flowing day one. Multifamily, where it's a performance improvement plan, they're cash flowing right off the bat. So the importance of making sure that you clearly define those goals, whether they're cash flow, equity growth in the back end, or whatever they may be, and make sure and plug that in. That's something that resonates with me right now too, because I'm in the same boat. So completely understand that.
Chad Ackerman, thank you so much for sharing with our audience today. We've so enjoyed talking to you. If any of our audience wants to reach out to you and find out more of what you're about, what Left Field Investors is about, where would be the best place for them to go?
Yeah, easiest place is to our website at leftfieldinvestors.com. Or you can reach out to me directly at chad@leftfieldinvestors.com as well. Always happy to meet some new people. So, but I appreciate the time today. This was great. Really enjoyed talking to you guys.
You too, Chad. Thank you very much.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate your time.